The picture you see on the screen is me. I'm going to narrate as that is me. I am going to tell you about a book I put together around 400 AD. I'm going to tell you that in the book is a story of Jesus coming to the Americas. There was my ancestors, and they wrote a bunch of things about their stories over a course of about 1,000 years. At about that point in time, roughly 400 AD, I took all those writings and compiled them, abridged them, edited them into one volume. The volume is named after me. This book was not published until 1830. 1830 in the United States. This book was published, but this is the story, and then you'll find out who I am. So, if we begin around the area of Jerusalem in 600 BC, there were some people living near Jerusalem that were kind of talked to by God. God asked them to move. One family with mostly boys said, wow, that's a big task, but if we are going to be gone long, maybe we should ask that nice gentleman there with his daughters to go with us. And they did, and they marched across some aspects of desert. They got and built a boat. With God's help, that boat got to the Americas. The actual journey is extremely difficult logistically to figure out of where it went and where it landed. So we'll just go with these people landed in America. But what's really key here, that the people who landed in America were from the Middle East in the 600s BC. Writing had been invented, metals had been invented, agriculture had been invented, metalworking. So these people brought that over, and these people were light-skinned. The men had beards. Hopefully the women didn't have too much of a beard. And they settled and cultivated and prospered and built cities. But in that short period of time at the early part of the story, there are two brothers of the original father figure who had argument after argument about what was right and what was wrong. And what happened was that the good brother, the nice brother, the light-skinned people are going to be named after him. And the other man, his name was Laman, he was turned red by God. So he became the origin of the red man, of Native American Indians. Now, I did that in quotes on purpose, so please note that. So now these two brothers and their descendants, light-skinned people, darker-skinned people, started fighting wars. Those wars lasted from roughly 600 BC all the way until the time of Jesus of Nazareth, or Jesus Christ. And what happens at that time, and this is interesting, Jesus, back in the Middle East, having been crucified and risen, on Pentecost he goes to heaven. But on Pentecost, in this book that I'm writing, he comes over to America and he spends a little over a month. And in that month, he preaches peace, and the red man and the white man make peace. And for 200 plus years, that peace lasts. Sadly, the war resumes from 200 to 400 AD, and the red man started winning and winning and winning, and now there was only me and my son. My son and I had these tablets that told this whole story that I had abridged and edited and all that, and I named the book after me because I'm the one who edited it and abridged it, and I died, and my son took it and hid it in a hill. He found a hill in present-day upstate New York. It wasn't New York at the time, of course, in 400 AD. There was no United States. There was no Columbus. Leif Erikson hadn't even gotten on a boat yet. So these tablets stay hidden from about 400 AD to 1820. And in 1820, a young man goes out into the woods to ask God, like, what's the truth about religion? what's the truth about you? And the Spirit of God and the image of both Jesus and Moroni come to Joseph and tell him, the truth is in these tablets just down the road, and then you'll know everything you need to know. And this man, his name is Joseph Smith, he goes, finds the tablets, finds out that they're not in English. He's going to translate this language into English, even though he has no training in foreign languages at all. He has some special stones that he finds in with the tablets that he rubs, and it makes it so he can see what it would say in English, and then he dictates it. People write it down for him. They get it compiled all together. It makes up in paperback book. It's a 500-page book, and it is named after me. If you see the picture of me again there on the screen, I'm the one who took the story I've told you and abridged and edited and compiled it into tablets that then Joseph Smith translated. And the reason it's called what it's called is it's named after me. It's called the Book of Mormon. And that last man who hid the tablets, he's known as Moroni. The only historical record of me is in this book. There is no other historical record anywhere that describes who I am. And that story that I've written goes from 600 BC to 400 AD. And all that I just told you, even though it's very quick, is what the Book of Mormon discusses and talks about. All those things you know about Mormons, about polygamy or not drinking alcohol and things, are in a different book that followed that Joseph Smith wrote. But the Book of Mormon is the book that covers that 1,000 years that I just told you, and that's the book I put together. And that's the Book of Mormon in a nutshell. I know I did some injustices, but honestly, that is the gist of it, and I have actually read the entire book. And having finished this book, I just want to recapitulate one quick thing. The period of the Book of Mormon is from the time of Jeremiah and Ezekiel in biblical times to just before the fall of Rome. So roughly 600 BC to 400 AD. But one of the things you might be asking yourself is, well, if I could just go to a museum and see these tablets, I'm good. I'll become a Latter-day Saint. Well, you can't do that because the tablets aren't on earth anymore. So it turns out that Moroni took them back to heaven in the way that that is meant for a Latter-day Saint or Mormon, so you'll have to look that up by yourself. But he took them back to the heavens, so we don't have them to look at. Now, Joseph Smith, of course, having thought through this, said, hey, family members and friends, let's sign affidavits that you saw it before it got taken back. And so there are affidavits by Joseph Smith's family and closest friends, but none of the people who disagreed with him ever saw it or signed any kind of affidavit that they saw it. So there is no tablets to see. The other thing that archaeologically is kind of interesting is if you read the book, since it took place after metal was invented and metalworking was brought to America according to this book, there were stories again and again of battles with the light-skinned people, which were called the Nephites, with breastplates of metal, swords of metal, shields of metal. And there were battles that they described that had hundreds of thousands of soldiers, sometimes 1 million people fighting all together in a battle. And all those breastplates and all those swords and all those shields would have been used, right, by these soldiers. So in all the digs for archaeological finds, anthropological finds, dinosaur finds, everything done in North and South America combined since the publication of the Book of Mormon in 1830, there's never been one breastplate, one sword, or one shield found. There is today not one shred of historical evidence that the Book of Mormon is true, outside of the belief that you may have that the Book of Mormon is true. And I think that's just important because in the Judaic Bible, the Old Testament, the Christian faith of the New Testament, and even in the Islamic faith in the Quran, they mention places that do exist and that you can actually go to. And in this book, there is no such thing. So that's just kind of interesting. And I think on that note, we'll just end, and I'll let you kind of do some more searches on your own. And thanks for joining me for the Book of Mormon.